school 1, they withdrew the students with a TA, took them down the corridor to a room, did some computer-based reading intervention. So they'd identified which of the students in the class, about 7 of them, who had reading and comprehension, reading issues, and they did a reading booster intervention in the middle of the English class. Yeah. In the other school, 2 days later, exactly the same scenario they were doing in the English class. Had identified about 5, 6, 7, 8 different students who had reading issues. And what they decided to do was pre-learning and overlearning. And by pre-learning and overlearning, I mean so this is what happened. The TA sat with them at the beginning of the lesson and said, right, this is where we're up to in the story. This is what we're covering today. This is some of the key words which are going to come up. Here's a question that the teacher is going to ask. And here's an answer that you could give. And here's the question that you could ask yourself. Took about 5 minutes. And at the end of the lesson, they did exactly the same, but in sort of reflective. This is what we covered today. This is where we're up to. This is what happened. This is what the teacher said. This is what children said. This is the exercise that we did. And that was overlearning. Pre-learning and overlearning. Which of those 2 groups, bearing in mind they were the same age, they were the same stage in the curriculum, they were the same problems that we're both facing in the different school environments, which of those groups do you think made better progress in the curriculum itself by the end of the year? So this is time for somebody to chip in and say their view.
I think because they've had the pre-learning, they've had the input that they need to support whatever it is their need is. But because they're allowed to stay in the classroom, they feel equal to their peers and therefore able to achieve as well as they are, instead of, oh, I can't do it, so someone's going to take me out and do something different because I'm not as clever as everybody else, or my need means that I'm not going to be able to achieve, so I need to go somewhere else.
Yeah. What you've just said there is a very powerful condemnation of everything to do with the world of SEN. I mean, the moment you give a child a label, I mean, there are plenty of advantages for giving a child a label. I'm not going to get into that debate now. I can't be bothered. But to put that aside for a second, when you withdraw them, you're also giving them messages that they don't belong in the classroom. And here what you've said, I believe, is that the very fact of them feeling like they do belong and they can participate and they can engage, that, you can call it energy or that belief or whatever, is a thing that is going to drive them forward more than any intervention that you could possibly deliver them. And for sure, all of us here will have experienced, when you withdraw children to do some kind of intervention, you'll get some kind of a boost. But nationally, you don't see those numbers. You don't see it increasing like that. Where you get real increase is in that when you hit the gold at the end of the rainbow, which is that you've created the environment of a sense of belonging and the sense of I can. That's where you get to. And there is no withdrawal intervention that can do that except for social, emotional, mental health ones. So my challenge to local authorities are, and this is me being a bit of an annoying bastard, but I would say something like, just don't get too huffy about it. But I would say something like, ditch all of your interventions except for pre-learning and overlearning, and then you will work out what else you need. Now, it's a very radical idea, and I'm not really suggesting you should ditch everything. And don't say, like I'm completely unrealistic and everything. I'm trying to make a point, which is refocus all forms of SEN about actually how we can include kids in the classroom, not how we can, address specific needs outside of the classroom. I appreciate what I've said is a bit radical, so let's get some kickback from some annoyed listeners. Who would like to kick back first?
Daniel, we've had a couple of messages on the chat as well, so if anyone wants to put any answers or communicate through the chat, they can do.
Okay. Thoughts?
Daniel, can I chip in there? I think, like Vicky said, it's withdrawal. We can end up marginalising students, and they feel completely different. And then I don't know a student who's ever been withdrawn from a lesson and caught up. And you might be the best hope you can wish for is that actually you withdraw to solve one problem, but you've created another problem because they'll fall behind in the lesson they've been removed from.
Yeah, this is a bit of a result of. I genuinely don't know anything about football, but this is, I believe, somebody explained to me a little bit like what's called the football manager syndrome, where you're judged on that season alone. Now, all of us in this call understand that child development happens over the span of some years, not over one particular season or this term's grades. And I think partly the problem which we have as a collective of professionals that are focusing on a particular cohort of students is that the any type of hard data grading is basically false for our cohorts. I'll give you an example. It's the most common challenge that we get, to the extent that I would say it was for me a bit boring, is that you rock up to a school and you say, right, okay, what are the biggest challenges? Well, there's a problem with this particular cohort of boys who are really behind in their maths. So what maths intervention should we do? Right? That's the question. And it's a very common question across the country. And I'm sure you have a cohort of boys in your schools who are significantly behind in their maths and what we're going to do about it. But nearly always, and this is the point, I'm trying to illustrate through a story, here you go, that what we're trying to do is to solve a problem, which is a hard data problem, and you'll never get there. And that's why, even though there's efforts all around the country to solve maths problems with boys, they haven't shifted any of the data for a decade. So let me give an example of how I think that from a SENCO's perspective, what we need to do is to solve it from a soft data perspective. And here's by means of an example. There was a boy in it was exactly the same scenario as I've described. Rock up to the school was in Sheffield. And the thing about Sheffield is it's very hilly. And the relevance of this story is that when I went and spoke to this group of boys, there was one particular boy who was rocking up to school at 9:30 or something. And so he was missing period one. And period one was where they did maths every day for some reason. I didn't ask too many questions about that. But nonetheless, there was maths was period one. And then to get to school, he missed the bus. So the thing is, we're in Sheffield, and the reason why he missed the bus was because he's helping single parent mum take care of two siblings who have severe physical disabilities. So he's a young carer, right? And so he's missing his school bus, and now he needs to after he's helped his mum. He needs to walk down the first hill, catch a bus up the next hill, walk down the next hill and catch a bus up the next hill or whatever it is, and eventually rocking up to school at 9:30. So why would you not, as a SENCO, why would you recommend that this boy isn't given additional maths booster class at lunchtimes? What are the two most obvious reasons? This is a SENCO test, by the way, just to see. I'm going to pick on someone. Come on, Michelle Dickinson, your time has come.
Hi. I think the first one, is we don't know well actually he can achieve in maths because he's not there because he's doing something invaluable and caring for his siblings and looking after mum. And second of all, that lunchtime could be his only time for himself and a recreational time to develop his own social, emotional and communication with his peers. So I think on that front, I don't think that would be suitable for that young person right now. And I think, if they didn't have maths period one every day, that would also help.
Yeah, well, ding, ding, ding. You got the two answers correct, 100% correct. Michelle, you can continue to be a SENCO. Very well done. So, obviously, who says he's got a maths problem? He's got a getting to school problem. And the second thing, he's a young carer. Don't ever take away the break times and lunch times of the young carer, right? So what we decided to do was to buy him a bike. And it cost, 50 quid. Got a bike and get to school. No, I can tell you where the real problem was buying a bike. Is not buying him a bike, but was managing all of the other kids who said, why can't you buy me a bloody bike? That's the real problem, right? Or the staff is saying, why are you buying him? We're spending money on blah, 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 blah. That's the real challenge. But there's a soft data solution to a hard data problem. And most of the hard data problems that you have actually require soft data solutions. There was a boy who was talking about football in Manchester. There was a boy in Wakefield, right? So consider the scenario. Head teacher is sitting in front of me. I'm in the head teacher's office, and the head teacher introduced me to a child who's about to be permanently excluded for being a very annoying child and very badly behaved and very sort of, not really engaging with staff. And he asked me to chat with this child to see if there's anything that we could do, which I don't do anymore, which is because I think it's an entirely ridiculous scenario. But let me just make the point. I basically tried to chat with him, and he's looking at me thinking, who's this annoying, eccentric, fat weirdo? I don't want to speak to you. And pretty much the entire conversation had gone badly. And so my last ditch attempt was, is there anything that you enjoy doing? Any hobbies? And he said, football. And I said, no, it's quite important that I don't know anything about football. That's part of this story, right? I said, oh, right. Do you support a team? He said, yeah, Man City. I said, oh, right. Is that the local team, is it? It's in Wakefield, which is apparently, I've been told afterwards, is a very stupid thing to say. But this is where the answer was, and it was a brilliant answer. He said, no, that was the team that my dad supported. And in that moment, I realized that this kid is dealing with a bereavement that is carrying a bereavement that he's never been supported with emotionally. He'd never dealt with it. He'd never faced that, never been supported with it. And so no wonder, he's overwhelmed with his own, psychological issues. He doesn't trust adults. He doesn't want to have anything to do with Anyway, look, I said to him, have you ever been to Man City for a football match? And he said, no. Would you like to go? And all of a sudden, I'm no longer so fat and weird and eccentric. I'm suddenly someone who's interested in, so he said, yeah, he'd love to go. So, cut to the next scene, and I'm calling up Man City. That's the first and last time I've ever called a football club. And I said, do you do football matches? Is it football you play? Is it? And how much is a ticket? And of course, they gave a ticket for free to him and his mum. And the school used some pupil premium money to pay for his mum to take him on the train down to Man City. That was the biggest breakthrough of his life and his career and his education career. And it had to do with someone, we managed to get some counselling to him. We managed to get him some support. And it was on the condition that he did all right for a couple of weeks that we would buy these tickets. And actually it was fine. So we managed to stave off the exclusion. The soft data, the story behind it, was much more powerful than the hard data, the list and numbers of exclusions or the list and numbers of lateness or any of that. All of that is crap. Where the real gold is in is understanding what's really going on. The problem which you have is conveying that and managing that. So I want to tell you a trick, right? Is this useful, Chris? Or am I just
No, Daniel. I was going to ask. It links into one of the questions that came in about, well, how do we effectively deploy staff? So as SENCOs, how can we effectively deploy staff in our department to meet the needs such as this boy? How can we effectively deploy staff?
Can I come to that in a moment? Is that all right? I think that's the right question, but I think there's a question just before it, if I may. Because inevitably the answer to that question is, well, it depends on your setting. And that's my get out clause for most questions, because every setting's different, right? But let me come back to that in a second. Let's say your job is to convince the head teacher not to exclude Ryan or Callum. So let's think about that for a second. Okay, you have a job of convincing, all right? So I'm going to make it slightly easier. Let's just imagine that you've got the pre-learning and overlearning thing, which you want to talk about for a second, right? And you've got to sell that to different people, right? So I'm going to show you how we might sell it to people. If you say to the head teacher, right, head teacher, I've got this idea. I think we should do this. What do you think? The head teacher is going to be thinking, most head teachers will be prioritizing stress, money, time, impact, and so on, and whether we can actually get staff to do this, because there's only so much we can ask staff to do at any one time. Right, are you with me? So if you go in and you say that to the head teacher, then you've got all of the hurdles to get the head teacher to come on board that you have not addressed. So here's what I'm going to say: the same message, but you think very carefully about who you are addressing it to. So I'm going to give you an example. If you want a head teacher to do something, you'd say, do you know what, head teacher, I've got an idea of how we can save staff some stress, but most importantly, we can save the school some money and also some time. How about this idea? At the very least, you've got their attention, because those are the key 3 pain points which most head teachers have. If you don't address those points, then you're basically up against the barriers that head teacher doesn't put down on purpose, but they have to manage all of those sorts of things very carefully. So now when you've asked for this particular type of intervention, which is going to cost another £20,000, you're pretty much going to get a no. But what you could say is, you'd say, well, this particular approach would seems on the surface to cost more money, but actually I think we'll end up saving money in the time. I've done a little calculation. I think we could end up saving more like £50,000 in the end. And I think that the amount of time we'd save, the amount of stress for you personally as a head teacher, but also other staff in the school, would be huge. I think it's worth exploring. Can we talk about it? That is, so you're saying that message to what a head teacher needs to hear. Now let's have the same message to a teacher. You're not going to say to the teacher, I think this is going to save you money, and because they're not interested in that. That's not their responsibility. So let's manage it slightly differently. We'll say, that intervention which we were doing, it was quite disruptive. And I've worked out a way that what we could trial is something that seems to work in other schools that could save you quite a lot of stress and time, right? And also boost the grades of the students. I think it might be really good. You might enjoy it. Would you be willing to give it a try? So we've taken the same message, the same intervention, but we've taken a completely different tack in the way that we've spoken. Now, I'm not saying that the specific words that I'm using are relevant for your school or setting. You need to work out, the character and how to make that work. But this is a key to making things happen. And now you're going to speak to parents. Parents aren't interested in your time, stress, and money. What they may be interested in is one of 2 things. It's very unlikely that parents are actually interested in grades, by the way. Nearly all parents say, I just want my child to be happy. Right? But okay, let's just say they are interested in making good progress as well for a minute. Okay, so then you say, look, I think this intervention is worth a try because I think could really boost their grades over a period of time, but also I think what we find is that children who do this are a lot happier. So you're Jen's taking an emergency call. No, it's all right, Jen, don't worry, I understand. That you what you're doing is you're manipulating and don't be afraid of the word manipulation. It's not a bad word. We're human beings. We need to articulate the same message in lots of different ways to different people. And this is the art of getting things done, is you work out what are their pain points and how do you need to articulate what you're articulating to them. Okay. I have a rule in my organization is that I don't care what you say. I don't care when you say it. I only care if the message lands. You're responsible not for saying it. You're responsible for the message arriving and for it being effective. Probably one of the least useful ways, apart from standing up in front of staff and saying, I think you should do this, one of the least useful ways of doing something is sending people an email. Because usually, I mean, obviously every setting is different and I'm open to that, of course. But basically, if you get a teacher who's getting an average of 50 to 100 emails a day and you're just sending them another bloody email, then don't be surprised if they forget it. And that you need to think around the barriers and you need to think about what they need to hear and you need to articulate to that. So if you think about a SENCO role as being the key communicator in their advocacy for children with challenges and needs, then your whole orientation about not what you're saying, but how you say it is going to determine whether you're effective or not. The relationships that you have, every single person here will have good relationships in school and some pretty crappy ones. And it's difficult because you still need to be effective with those teachers who are annoyed by you. It's difficult. Just before I come on to Chris's question, can you get any feedback about that? Do you agree, disagree? You hate what I'm saying? This guy's such an idiot and his hair is stupid. Anything else? Let's pick on Rachel Hawkrig. No, you have to do your mute button. You're trying. Whilst you're trying, Sally Morris, you seem like a very sensible kind of a person. Is what I've said sensible or is it completely bonkers?
No, I agree with what you're saying completely. I think that as a SENCO, sometimes you do send emails, but I think a lot of the time, face-to-face really matters when you're speaking to teachers and building up those relationships. And I think as a SENCO as well, you feel like you know everybody. You get invited to subject leaders, you get invited to the pastoral team meetings, you are interacting with the SLT, but you're also interacting with NQTs. So it's having that ability to respond and talk to a great range of people that are within the school setting. So I completely agree with you, and I think that it does take time to be open and think what makes people tick, because obviously what makes people tick, like you say, is dependent on what matters to them. So yeah.
Thank you, Sally Morris. A very sensible, grounded answer. Very sensible, grounded.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
It's weekend soon, though.
Bring on the alcohol. Rachel.
Right, first, I have 2 admissions to do. I'm not Rachel. I'm just standing up for Rachel. My name is Anastasia. Secondly, I don't think you're stupid and hairy.
What?
I don't think you're stupid or hairy, just to clarify it. Obviously, luckily, I'm with a good work relationship with Rachel, and I can see this train SENCO gets day-to-day, communicating to different teachers and staff. But like you said, it's important to be able to find the best way how to communicate with them. So yeah, I do agree.
Well, that's all we need is just some converts to agree. Everyone else can disagree as far as I'm concerned, Chris. So thank you very much, Rachel. Naomi, we're going to be speaking to you next because isn't Hamel got something to do with Star Wars?
I believe so, yeah.
Are you a Jedi?
No, definitely not.
You look like a Jedi, just saying. You look like Yoda. No, that's not true. That was a joke. But Yoda speaks cool. Now, Chris, you asked a question. How do you deploy staff?
Yeah, that was the one. So it was, how do we effectively deploy staff, especially in this current climate with guidelines and restrictions?
I'm probably not the best person to talk about safeguarding and current restrictions, partly because I'm not currently a practitioner in a school, so I don't have like massive good ideas about it. I see everybody flailing around and trying their best and thinking they've worked it out. I don't really know. I think I have to be honest. Let me talk about deployment of staff, though. There are two things that I think that you need to think about. Are you talking, Chris? Are you talking about like teaching assistants? You mean?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, teaching assistants or HLTAs, anyone that under SENCO might be deployed. Right.
So listen, I have written in the national press, I wrote a series in The Guardian about this, and there are very few people in the higher echelons of education who think positively about teaching assistants. I'm of the opinion that they are the best thing that you can invest in, but it comes with a caveat. If you have, let's say, for example, 20 teaching assistants, I personally would probably, as a rule, get rid of 5, spend the £100,000 that you'll be saving. I'd spend £20,000 of that upskilling the other 15 to a much, much higher level. Okay, and then making sure that the deployment that you have is of the highest possible skill level. I think a highly skilled TA is about the most effective thing that you can have in a school for children with real needs. They are the saviours of SEN and inclusion. They pick up problems and they manage to do everything. But the danger is deploying staff who aren't skilled and aren't trained. There are 2 fundamental problems which are recurring with all teaching assistants. One is they do this natural thing called task completion. So I've got 3 children. My 7-year-old doing some Lego, if he gets stuck, I'm like, give it here, sort it out, give it to him, right? Because I'm being a stupid parent. Whereas, the teacher in me would go, I'm going to facilitate you to work this out. Now, it's a natural human adult response to complete the task on behalf of a struggling child. That's a natural human response. Your job as a SENCO is to curtail that, is to train them to the point where they don't complete anyone's task. And instead they prompt and support. They facilitate. But that takes training. Second problem is that they tend to get in the way of social inclusion. Classic example, me sitting on my own in the class because I'm Billy No Mates, and then the TA comes over to me and says, oh, hello, Daniel. And then they sit next to me and then they're trying to be all nice to me. Of course, what they've done is they've made the problem worse. They've got in the way of social inclusion. This is really nice. What I'm saying to you is 2 examples of how TAs... Rachel Malt. Malt. Rachel. Malt, is that you? I'm going to mute you.
Hello.
I muted you.
Hello.
Hello. Who's saying hello?
Me.
Who's that?
It's Rachel.
Turn your to mute. You're making a big noise.
Oh.
You're a very nice person, but you're making a big noise. I forgot what I was saying because I'm ADHD. What was I saying? Something about children. Was it about children? Adults, SENCOs, TAs. Was it? We're talking about TAs.
Inclusive in the classroom, Daniel.
Who?
Hi, it's Michelle. You were just talking about using the TAs in the classroom and making sure they don't just, sit next to and make sure they're inclusive.
Did I say that? That's a good idea, I think, isn't it? Did I say that, Chris? That's a good one. I'm playing on it. Of course, I remember now. Thanks, Michelle. You just been my TA. You see that? You just prompted me. So, Naomi Hamill, Jedi Knight. I think the danger with TA is that you have the potential of a brilliant deployment and you have the potential of a terrible one. And you will not have something in between. I mean, this is true. You'll love some of your TAs and you'll think some of them, God, what are they even doing? Why are they even in this school? Why did I inherit this one? How do I get rid of them? Blah, blah, blah. That's true in every school in the country. I think that one of the ways that you can do this, and this is important to me, I did not want for a week to go by without having a line management meeting with the TAs. And by line management, you ask them, what did they do? What was the impact? And what are they planning to do in the next week? That conversation doesn't have to be, like I had 40 plus TAs in my department because I was in a secondary setting, and I simply didn't have the time or capacity to meet that need. So I had my HLTAs, and I had 4 HLTAs, and their role was to line manage the TAs on a weekly basis, and my role was to line manage the HLTAs. Through that system, and also a weekly group meeting, we were able to track every one of the 250 students who were on our books. But more importantly, you ask about what they did, what the impact was, and we try and do training through that line management process. Right, the gold at the end of the rainbow for TAs is about, the archetypal gold is about prompting and facilitating, is about doing as little as possible, but in a skillful way. There's no reason why you couldn't have one TA with 2 different classes sometimes. Of course, it will be varying our age and also different needs. And therefore, this question cannot be tackled by any one person, because every setting on this webinar is different. Every school here is different. The fact that you're all in Bolton is just a geographical thing. Every SENCO here has a different set of challenges. But the principle of training to a high level, having less rather than more, having extremely high standards that are managed through proper line management, is what you call rigorous staff development. That is the way to go. And when you have that, you have Sally Morris has raised a hand. Go on then.
Sorry, I was just saying as well, it's about the culture of the TA. Because I think sometimes in a classroom, a TA may feel that they are not as recognised as the teacher, and perhaps the children also feel that way too. And I think that it's making sure that status in the classroom becomes quite equal, so that the children feel just as happy to talk to the TA, and their skills are recognised as well by the teacher, and so that they are deployed well, and the children appreciate their, how they support them as well. I do think it's about the culture of the TA, I think, and making sure that the school appreciates what they do and what they're able to do and what they know, their knowledge.
I think that's such a brilliant point, Sally. And again, one of the almost impossible tasks of the SENCO is to advocate not just for the child, but on behalf of the resources in the school and the TAs. So, and don't think that that's going to change overnight. That will change over the course of a year or 2. It's a cultural shift, and cultural shifts don't happen, this week. Job shifts and job changes just take a lot of time. My view, by the way, is that the SENCO should say as very little as possible in public, but you should always get other school leaders, heads of key stage or heads of department, to say, look, I tried using the TA in this particular way. So what we did was we trialed in one particular class where the TA teacher actually spoke for once and had a little plan, and then they did this, and we trialed it for a couple of weeks, and we found actually that ended up saving quite a bit of time and had a big impact, and we really like it. If you were to say exactly the same as that, no one's going to give a damn what you say. But if you to get the head of departments or the head of key stage or whichever teacher that's a popular teacher to say it, then everyone's listening. And so in a way, your advocacy of TAs should really come through the other teachers. And you can only really work with 1 or 2 teachers properly and really develop them and get them to advocate. The problem that you have as being a SENCO is, you're just a bloody SENCO asking us to do yet more. And that may vary according to the, levels of problem which you have in your school. And I don't know whether you're a new SENCO or you've been a SENCO for 30 years, but either way, the challenge still exists. But the best, most effective way of deploying TAs is through high quality training, high quality management, and getting the teachers to take some sort of ownership, but certainly in public. Let's deal with a different question. Is that all right, Chris? Did I say anything useful there?
Yeah, that's great, Daniel. I'm just looking at the time now. We're all right to maybe wrap this up because we've got a couple more things that we need to do, and I was hoping to finish around 3 o'clock, so we might have to just go slightly past that.
I've just started. That was the end of the introduction. Should we take any sort of final points?
From the questions we've had in, Daniel, you've answered all of them. I think the only one that I thought was a really interesting question is how do we ensure that parents with learning needs are aware of SEN procedures at our schools?
Good question. Right. Obviously, you all know that that there are that not always and not officially, but there is very often a hereditary aspect to SEN, where you have a child who presents with certain types of needs, and it's not entirely surprising that the parent has certain types of needs as well. But comorbid with those needs very often is mental health issues, okay, and also potentially impoverishment and so on. So it's very difficult. Let me ask you, let me suggest something to you. Right, I personally, as a result of being a SENCO, am allergic to educational bullshit. And one of the educational bullshits that there is that there is a statutory requirement for you to put your SEN information report on your website. Right now, let me be honest with you. I don't give a damn if you've done it, you haven't done it. All I really care is what ends up getting communicated to parents. So the most outstanding SEN information reports that I've seen have been made by parents for parents. The most outstanding SEN information reports that I have seen have been done in bite-sized videos. The best parental engagement is not long, boring meetings that take an hour and 20 minutes. That most parents haven't got a bloody clue how to survive a meeting that long, right? And they're not used to cold coffee. I actually have cold coffee here. I can handle cold coffee because I've been a SENCO, right? Okay, but most parents, what they need is someone to pick up the phone to them once a week, a TA, and say, your kid is fine. They're doing great. And you're a great parent. And thank you so much. I can't chat now, but just giving you some praise. You're brilliant. Ryan came into school today, breathing in and out. It was amazing how much he breathed. And he's definitely taken more breaths than anyone else in the school. He's such a breather. But I can't speak now. I've got to rush off to another lesson. Just saying, thumbs up to you, parent. So what I'm saying to you is the emotional approach to the parent is more significant than the information that you give them, meaning how the parent feels. The first thing I did when I got into my office, and I had like an office, is I took down those stupid blinds. I got rid of those lights, which were like strip lights. I got rid of all of the office furniture, and I got in some free cycle couches, a rug, a table, some curtains, got some kids to make some pictures for the walls, put in a lamp, and I quite literally created a lounge environment in my office. I wanted a parent to feel at home. And if you can't make them feel at home, then go meet them in a cafe. Or if you don't meet them in a cafe, go to their home. Obviously, COVID-19, be safe, it's not worth dying over. But the idea being you prioritize their feelings, you prioritize their sense of comfort, you prioritize not what is said, but how it is received, how the information that they're provided is useful to them. This isn't about tick boxing and statutory guidance. This is about being useful and effective. Most of that will preempt all major problems with parents because they get the impression that you care about them. No meeting should be the frontier of discussion. Nothing can ever really be accomplished through a long meeting. It's a waste of time. It's stupid. And no parents enjoy it. And a lot of parents feel nervous about it. Okay, so have short meetings. Prioritize asking about how they're doing. Be friendly, offer them a drink, make them feel comfortable. All of this is as important as what to say. It's the how you say it that counts. And there is one way of telling, right, whether you've been effective in your communication or not. And that is by looking, is if I or someone external or a peer were to go and speak to those parents and say, tell me about SEN in your school, right? And the question, and the answer to that question should be, oh, I really like them. They're doing a great job and I think they're fantastic. That's more important than they say, right, yeah, well, I know that they've got these systems, they do this, they've got this information, and then they do this type of assessment, and then they follow up with that. If I heard that as the answer, right, then I wouldn't believe, right, that they really understand or really get you or get what you are doing. And to create those conditions is about creating that sense of safety for parents. No one else says this, but I'm telling you, okay, care for how your parents feel about and their relationship with the school, because fundamentally that will have a massive impact on how the child does.